Hey folks, how are you? It's Simon here and welcome to another live stream. Today I am happy to accept your questions. So as soon as you have a question on anything that we're going to be talking about, please just write it in the comments. Now, this week at Patreon, which is patreon.com/Simon Morel, I had a question about the sound on a lesson I had done by Daddy Cool for Eagle Rock. Now, is basically how the tune goes. It's very early in the morning here, so I'm not completely awake, but that's basically how it goes. Now, you can hear I've just got the guitar going straight into my amp. Now, let me just show you what that looks like. You can see here that here's my amp. This is a Marshall. Now we can't see the picture. Oh, there we go. This is a Marshall Origin 20. Actually, relatively inexpensive. I picked it up secondhand for, I think it was $450 the head, and I already had a 1x12 cabinet. It's not the most expensive setup, but I think it sounds great. Now, I've got that going through actually a Torpedo Captor X, which is how you're hearing the sound on the internet, because I get that to basically sit between the head and the cabinet, and I send a line out from the Captor X into the audio interface and then into the internet. So, hi, that's how that works. I am attenuating the amp a little bit because I want to show you what happens when you just turn the amp up, and I just don't want to kill my neighbors. It's like 10:30 on a Sunday morning here in Sydney, Australia. So now that sound, it's fine. It's not terribly inspiring though. It feels quite flat, maybe a little bit thin. And so generally with tube amps or valve amps, whatever you want to call them, as you turn up the volume, this happens. So I've turned up the volume from about 5 to about 8. This is a 20-watt amp, so it's not mental, but plenty loud enough for most applications, I think. Now, what you hear here is that suddenly there's a bit of a rumble going on. Let me just demonstrate. I play a bit harder and I push into the guitar a bit more. Okay, so here you can hear the amp has started to work harder. Right, now this is exactly the sound we want for this tune. Right? Now the problem is that often you're never going to be able to play that loud, and you might not have an attenuator. So to get the sound you want, you either have to have it really loud, or you can do the following things. Now, the first thing I recommend is turning the amp back down to where it was. Now, most amps have some kind of gain structure, knob, channel, whatever. So I would say to switch the gain on. Hey, Mark, how are you, man? Good to see you. Thanks for the donation. For the gain thing, just turn the gain up a little, and then, hey, mad musician, it's all happening here. I like the side chat. So you guys carry on side chatting. I'll try not to be distracted. If you do have any questions, though, please just ask. Okay, so now that is with the original volume at about 5, and I've turned the gain knob to about 8. Now, that isn't quite as, just not as good as it was when I had the amp turned up and the gain down. So let's just compare the two. I'll turn the gain back down to 5, and I'll turn the amp back up to about 8. Okay, so for me, I think the louder amp with the lower gain is a better sound. Now, this doesn't necessarily only apply to this tune, Eagle Rock by Daddy Cool. absolutely classic guitar sound, right? It's warm, it's wide, and it sounds great. But like I mentioned before, you're not always going to be able to have stuff up that loud. Certainly, so I play this thing. This is why I didn't demonstrate with this. This is a Fender Deluxe, but it's not the cheapest amp in the world, and it's not the sort of thing that everybody has. So I didn't want to demonstrate with a 1967 Fender Deluxe because it's literally the best amp for me ever. So I wanted to do with something a bit more accessible. That's why we're using that Marshall. Now, the thing you can do with the Marshall is, or the amp rather, is you can put an overdrive pedal in front of it. So now the cool thing about the overdrive pedal in front of it is that what a lot of people do when they buy an overdrive pedal, so I put my amp back down to 5. This is the sound at 5. Now what I'm going to do, I'll just show you a picture here of what my little pedal board's set up. Share screen. Here we go. Here's my high quality pedal board setup. It's, again, I tried to do something pretty cheap. So we've got the classic blues driver. And that's really all I'm using. This stuff here, the loop station and this Blue Ocean. Loop station is always on the board, so I use it for teaching, to demonstrate. And delay, well, it's just a cheap delay. I think it costs maybe $25, something like that. I can't remember. It's really cheap. And this is the blues driver. I figure that's kind of the pedal that everybody has, or you have a version of that, or you have like a super overdrive, which is the yellow one, or anything like that. Anything that's going to be able to give you a bit more level. Okay? So, at the moment, I've got the level. Sorry, I can't show you this at the same time. I couldn't figure out the technology. I tried hard, but I couldn't do it. Anyway, so the level is at 12 o'clock. Okay, so that's without the pedal engaged. This is with the pedal engaged. Now, what a lot of people tend to do is they buy an overdrive pedal. I want distortion. So what they do is they turn up the gain thing, and you just get this sound. And then everybody goes, oh, this overdrive pedal's rubbish. I need to buy another overdrive pedal. Because what they're watching is YouTube videos with people demonstrating the overdrive pedal, but they are omitting a vital fact that makes it sound better. Now, that's a pretty ordinary guitar sound, I think you probably agree, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the gain out. So I'm going to turn that gain dial all the way down to the left, to 0, in fact. Here's my guitar sound now. Now you can hear if I disengage the pedal, my guitar actually is a bit louder than it was before. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the level up. Wait for it. How about the amount of gain from the guitar? You mean the actual pickups? So if that's what you mean, Mark, humbuckers will put out a higher output than a single coil guitar. So you're always going to be working kind of against or with the humbuckers a little bit to a certain degree. Yes. Yeah, right. So it's funny you ask about that. Look what I've got here. I've got a Telecaster. So it's almost like I preempted your question. How high? All the way up, man. All the way up. All the way up to 11. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn that level knob on the pedal up. I'm going to turn it to 9 o'clock. Now you already hear that what is happening is now that I've got a high output guitar, I'm going from the guitar into the blues driver. I've turned the gain all the way down. I've turned the level almost all the way up. And you can already hear that thickness is back. but the volume is not mental. Okay, do it make sense? And so we'll try our Eagle Rock again. And you can hear that the sound of the amp pretty good, but I have got the gain all the way down. So that's, to me, a great solution to your problem. So your problem was, I plugged my guitar into the amp, I've tried to play Eagle Rock, it doesn't sound like the record. What do I do? The sort of using an overdrive pedal, I think, is a great solution, right? So, and you get that kind of edge or breakup kind of sound. And it even works when I turn the amp a little bit more down. So now I've got the amp at 3. And I'm going to turn the pedal up a little bit more. I've still got the gain at 0. So what happens now is that, imagine this is your headroom of the amp, right? Here's my guitar. I'm going into the headroom. So we've got, you know, this much headroom when I put the signal in. What we're doing with the overdrive pedal is we're going with the guitar into the overdrive pedal. It's boosting the signal so that when the signal hits the preamp, the front of the amp can't cope, freaks out, and you get that lovely sound. Compression from the attenuator. Yeah, I think it probably does put a bit of compression on. I haven't got anything switched on the attenuator, but that is an excellent question. For me, I don't love compression. I don't know what you feel about compression. I know in the sort of country music zone or the funk music zone where they have that kind of guitar sound, compression is the king of sounds. I just hate it. I just feel it takes all the dynamics out of the music. But that's because that's the kind of music I like. You know, I like the fact that you can... Do you know what I mean? So that if I can play with my fingers. So for example, did a lesson the other day on People Get Ready by Curtis Mayfield. Right? So we got C, A minor, F, C. But I was playing with my fingers there. You can see, and here it's not really that busy. Now, if then I use the pick, you hear that? There's suddenly a massive dynamic swell, effectively, because, and you get much more of the sound. It's pretty sweet, eh? And the reverb is on the Captor X, Mark. You're pointing out all the very good questions. It's good to have somebody here who knows what they're doing. So the reverb is indeed on the Captor X. Right. So now the other sort of thing you can do with the overdrive amp, if you do have some kind of attenuation, this is where the action really starts to hot up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the amp back up to, I've turned the pedal off. Right, there's my sound. The amp's at about 8. Okay. Now I've got it attenuated on the Captor notes, the Captor X notes, Captor X, Torpedo Captor X. You've got two stages really of attenuation. You basically have full bore, because no attenuation. The middle section is what they call club, and the bottom section is what they call studio or something like that. The bottom section takes so much dB out of the sound. It's like, it's so quiet. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely excellent for being in here and teaching. Today I've got it in the middle level, so I think it's 6 dB and then minus 20 dB, right? So I've got minus 6 dB at the moment, basically. So I've got the amp. This Origin 20 has got a sort of different power stages. It can go from, like, I think it's 1, 5, and 20 watts. So I've got it on the 20 watt thing, full bore, basically. Right. This is a sound that, unless you have an attenuator and you're playing in the house, you're not going to make any friends because it's going to be crazy loud. Right? So, Class A indeed. So now, what happens when I use the overdrive pedal now? I'm going to turn the overdrive pedal to 12 o'clock. Again, I've got the gain all the way to the bottom. Now, actually quieter, but a bit more overdriven. And it's just like a kind of less good sound. That's a 12 o'clock, right? Which is where it's at parity almost with the volume. But as we again make the signal bigger, pushing into the amp, and the amp goes, ah! This kind of thing. So, now, that is my favorite Beatles song. And what's happening here is I've got the amp at 8. On the gain stage on the amp, I've actually got it at like 5. It's always on this amp. But I've got the blues driver with the volume level about 9 o'clock and the gain at 0. How awesome is that? Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the gain a little bit up. Turn the gain to like sort of, 3 o'clock. So I've got my clock's the wrong way around here. So I've got the level pushed like to 9 o'clock. The level on the gain is at 3 o'clock, right? So it is exactly that, Mark. It is like a preamp. Where do you put the overdrive pedal in the sequence of pedals? That is an excellent question, Andrew. Thanks so much for your question. Generally, the first thing, it depends what you've got, all right? But I'll pretend you have all of the pedals, okay? So first things first, tuner. Tuner is always going to go first because you want your signal to be pure going into the tuner so you tune correctly. All right, next up. Now, this is a subjective thing. I put the fuzz next because I love fuzz and I always use it. And I think it sounds best when there's not much in the way of it. So then fuzz, and then I have a wah because I'm a middle-aged man. So I like the wah directly after the fuzz. Then after the wah, then your overdrive stage comes in. I generally, on my live board, I actually have 3 different overdrive pedals so that I can have low, medium, high, and then I can stack them as I like, as in put more on at the same time, more than one on at the same time if I want. Then after that, I generally have modulation. So by modulation, I mean if I'm using a chorus pedal or a phaser or a flanger, something like that. After that, then you have time, so delay, basically. I actually also have 2 delay pedals on the board, one for slapback delay and one for a slightly longer delay. And then sometimes I actually have, I put something like the Boss Blues driver that I'm using today. The other thing I have is a MXR Sugar Drive. It's like a low overdrive pedal that I always have on. So it always is pushing the amp a little bit, which is kind of what I'm demonstrating today. Compression, yes, compression first, but I don't use compression, so yeah, that's why I forgot about it. Compression, boost, overdrive, reverb, EQ. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, you put the boost before the overdrive. That's cool. Anyway, so what we're doing here is that we've got the, I digress, but thanks for your question, Andrew. I hope that answers it. So then we've got level, it's up a bit. And I guess this is where, this is how YouTube gets you, or the people who demonstrate overdrive pedals on YouTube get you to buy the overdrive pedal. Because they've already got, let me turn that up a bit more. Their amp is already overdriving. And then they put an overdrive on top. No wonder it sounds great. You know what I mean? Like, so. So the secret for me with overdrive pedals, and look, I like overdrive pedals. I've got loads of them. A few. And they are great, but I don't know how much difference there is between overdrive pedal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you set them up to work like this. You know, here's the sound of the amp, and then, because that is already quite overdriven. Right? So that is what I kind of want to demonstrate today. So thanks to Bruce from Patreon for my question there. You can go and check out that lesson for Daddy Cool directly at Patreon, which is just here. Mark's just asked a question. Any tips for pedals with solid state? You can do exactly the same thing. So let me... This is a Boss Katana 50. I bought it about 6 months ago for using in lessons. I had a Supro amp, which I sold because it was expensive and it's just sitting there and I needed money. So I bought this. It was about $300. And I've got to say that I've used this. I think I might be doing a video on this thing soon because I think it's amazing. It really sounds like an amp, which for me is better than a lot of its competitors. And it's got all of those clever effects on board, so you don't need to buy any pedals. It's actually got a boost knob on the main channel, so you can kind of do what I'm doing with the tube amp. This is a solid state amp. So tips for solid state stuff with pedals, I think, is exactly the same. You can make it do the same sort of thing. It might not sound exactly the same, but it will be pretty great and greater than it already is now. So, you know, you don't need to go and spend $500 on a Wampler super duper overdrive pedal. Go and pick yourself up a secondhand blues driver. There's like literally 8 million of them in the world. Put it in front of the amp, turn the gain all the way down and the level all the way up and have it hit the amp and it will sound better. You will make your amp sound better if you're going for that kind of sound. All right. And that probably covers us off for today. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope everything is clear. If you have any other further questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can put a comment here in the video and I will get straight back to you. Look, I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Keep playing guitar. It's great. Turn it up. See you later. Bye for now.